Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Did you just use the bailout screen as a mirror? We're going to talk about that. Folks, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. This is Friday. It's Johnny Cash Friday. We're going to I can't believe you just did that. That's hilarious. We're going to listen to as much Cash music as we can for those of you listening on terrestrial radio, while at the same time peppering in the news and events of the day. We got a lot of them. Stock market has been going up and down, kind of a roller coaster the last couple of days, so we thought we would check in with Michael Busler. He is a professor of finance up at Stockton University in New Jersey. Also, you've seen his stuff on a plethora of media outlets. We're going to talk to him. Then at 7:30, we've got State Representative Josh Miller on the program. You certainly want to stay tuned for that because, well, a couple of things. So I reached out to Josh yesterday because I was like, you know what? I really want somebody to respond to this, record revenue that we were having here in Arkansas. And then we got talking about deer hunting, and I really think this is, I think we're going to talk a little bit about chronic wasting disease in our deer. The Game and Fish Commission, of course, they have recently expanded the quarantine zones. I think now they've got Baxter County in there. I think they also have Stone County in there. I was talking to Josh about it. We're going to discuss this because he is I think he's the chair of the subcommittee, the Game and Fish. So we will talk to State Representative Josh Miller. It'll be a fascinating conversation because, I guess from what I can tell, this is the whole chronic wasting disease is really how do you put this nicely? A competition. I don't know what kind of competition it would be, but it's a competition between private sector biologists and government biologists. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. We'll have that at 7:30 for you. You don't want to miss it. Let's start with this news. Congressman Rick Crawford, who will be on this program a week from today, there's no telling what's going to happen between now and 7 days from now when it comes to the impeachment inquiry, the media circling the wagons, the media continuing to lie to you, the media continuing to tell you that the President of the United States does not have the authority to ask about former vice presidents. I mean, I have said throughout this week that it is apparent to me that Joe Biden ran for president so that when all of this stuff, or if this stuff was ever prosecuted, the things that he did, the corrupt things that he did in Ukraine, and apparently the corrupt things that the Democrat Party, I think some Republicans were doing in Ukraine as well, would not be as, well, let me just say this. I mean, apparently, if you ask the government of Ukraine in an effort, of course, this requires giving Trump the benefit of the doubt, which no one's willing to do because the left thinks they're morally superior. Every time they approach an argument, they are morally superior, so they don't have to listen to reason or facts. But if the former vice president was advancing corruption in the Ukraine, and the president is trying to stop corruption, and the new president of Ukraine ran on a platform of anti-corruption, the president is saying, hey, it's of course, you got to be, he's trying to restore the diplomatic relationship. He's trying to ferret out corruption. Of course, the left thinks that Donald is corrupt, so he can't possibly be trying to do anything good because they believe this man is the devil because they have such a personal hatred for him. That's kind of where we are. And why? Because the media's been lying to people for the most part. But I just think that just think about this. What if Joe Biden went over to the Ukraine and killed somebody? Are we saying that you can't prosecute him because he's a presidential candidate? Somehow because he's running for office? it does that he's above the law. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Can you imagine? Can you imagine if that was like the standard? Was like, well, I'm running for president now, or I'm running for dog catcher, so you can't prosecute me. You know, the guy got into office. The man, he can't even talk straight. His teeth are falling out of his mouth. His blood's shooting out of one of his eyes. The man has no business running for president. There's a report that the reason he didn't run against Hillary Clinton in 2016 is because Hillary had this on him and was going to use it and expose it. Although I'm not sure if that's true, because I think if Clinton would have done that, I think they would have exposed themselves as well, and a lot of other Democrats, like people on Adam Schiff's staff and others. Mitt Romney's former national security advisor in 2012, former CIA agent on the board of Burisma, the same company that Joe Biden was making, or Hunter Biden was making $50,000 a month at. It's fascinating, but I mean, seriously, are we going to say, well, the president can't ask about corruption? And the thing is, once again, all of this really is a red herring, because the real ask was about the 2016 election and CrowdStrike. The real ask was asking the Australian Prime Minister, was asking the counterparts of William Barr over in Italy. They're trying to get to the bottom of this. The whole thing is corrupt. And they never thought they would get caught. And so we are still at a point where whatever the mainstream media says, whatever's the latest outrage, if you just believe 180 degrees the other way, you're probably going to be correct in what the truth is, because they are that, the media is that corrupt, and I think even people in the media have a lot to lose here. Not just their Marxist fantasies that looked good in their journalism classes on a chalkboard when they were in school. Not just those. I'm talking about even more that we don't even know about yet. Congressman Rick Crawford is in the news today. He's on let's see, in the Democrat Gazette, Frank Lockwood. He is one of 14 Republican congressmen who has signed a letter to 3 Democrats in the United States Senate. Good for him. The letter, again, 14 congressmen, including Republican Rick Crawford. The letter is sent to U.S. Senators Patrick Leahy of Vermont, Bob Menendez, who is not a stranger to scandal, of New Jersey, and Dick Durbin of Illinois, quote, clearly pressured the government of Ukraine. Now, this was a letter these senators sent to the government of the Ukraine to urge the government to continue and to not cooperate with the Mueller investigation. These were public officials being paid by taxpayers who were pressuring a foreign government to help investigate President Donald Trump, who, by the way, at this point is the most investigated, vetted president in American history, and yet he's still in office, and yet they still haven't gotten him. If Don Jr. or Eric Trump or anybody in the Trump family had been accused of what Hunter Biden has been accused of, this would be non-stop media coverage. Their lives would be torn apart. It would be ruined. They likely wouldn't be able to walk down the street because, that's what would be going on right now. But because they're Democrats, the press loves them. And they continue to say there is no Rudy Giuliani and the president, and despite there's no evidence, the man is on tape confessing to the Council on Foreign Relations. He probably thought that would never get out. Frankie Lockwood writes, U.S. Representative Rick Crawford of Jonesboro was one of 4 House Intelligence Committee members who signed Thursday's letter. It urges Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Vice President Mike Pence to investigate the 3 senators' disturbing conduct and statements. Quote, we do not ask this lightly, but it is critical to maintain public faith in the integrity of the Senate in these trying times. Let's see, the goal here, in every possible way would avoid irritating top American officials. Let's see. Refusing to cooperate with the probe, they wrote, would send a worrying signal. Okay, here it is. This is it. A worrying signal to the Ukrainian people as well as the international community about your government's commitment more broadly to support justice and the rule of law. So they were on their moral high horses, these Democrats. Now, Ukraine, if you don't cooperate with the Mueller investigation, what does cooperate mean? Maybe it meant to cover a bunch of stuff up. Wink, wink. Now that we know what we know about what the Democrats were doing in Ukraine, this letter was probably an act of intimidation so that Ukrainian officials will keep their mouths shut about the Democrat corruption that was going on in Ukraine. You better cooperate with the Mueller investigation, again, or it would send a worrying signal to the Ukrainian people as well as the international community. What international community? You mean the same international community that's starting to listen to the President of the United States again, directly? Not because he's backed by this person or that person, but because he's the one that's actually making decisions. Let's see here. Let's get a quote here. The Gazette, in an interview Thursday evening, Rick Crawford said he believes the senators crossed the line by writing the letter. That's why Republicans raised no objections in the letter back in May when the senators first publicly released it. Crawford said, "I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sure the letter was public because these letters do tend to be public. It didn't come to my attention. I think that basically what they were asking for in this letter was calling for investigations." Well, that's what the president did. I don't know that it's necessarily wrong or inappropriate to do that per se, but I do think it's wrong and inappropriate to do it and then accuse the president of wrongdoing. I'm just asking for consistency. If it's okay for the senators to write the letter demanding investigations from our ally, then why would it not be okay for the president to do the same thing? That's exactly right. There was nothing illegal about what those Democrat senators did writing to Ukraine in their official capacities. And senators oftentimes do get involved every now and then in international affairs. That they are when they consider treaties and things like that. I mean, it has to be ratified in the Senate. It's supposed to be the deliberative body of our representative republic. The president has broad constitutional authority. And if you really are parsing this, now the Democrats are shifting to, well, the president's interfering in an election. The president's interfering in an election. The president's interfering in an election. That is only true because Joe Biden decided to run for president for some reason. Now think about that. So if what would they be saying if Joe Biden wasn't running for president? Well, the president, this is unprecedented. He's going after a former vice president. This is so. Don't you know that this was all going to happen anyway? You know how many other Democrats are likely connected to this situation? This was all coming out. You have a special prosecutor in Durham. Or not a special prosecutor, rather, but you have a U.S. attorney in John Durham looking into this. You have another U.S. attorney over in Utah, John Huber, looking into this. You have AG William Barr, who's looking into all of this stuff. And they have found treasure troves of evidence. So anyway, that's what I think. And if Hillary Clinton gets in, it'll be for the same reason. At this point, if Hillary Clinton were to announce for president, it will be for the exact same reason I think Joe Biden did, which was, the Trump administration, when they came into office, and now, because think about this. This has been something that they didn't have all at once. We have to assume the Trump administration comes in, the whole James Comey thing happens. They realize that they've got these FISA warrants. They realize that they were illegally obtained. All of this stuff has still not been declassified yet, right? You have to understand, we're still waiting for the declass of the FISA. We're still waiting for the other Inspector General report, right? But the president already knows it all. He's read it all. It's declassified to him, right? So all of those things led to were breadcrumbs that led to where we are now. And you've got these people that had security clearances, like John Brennan. The reason Rand Paul and these others, remember, wanted John Brennan's former CIA director security clearance revoked was because the guy's now a contributor at CNN. And the guy is able to get some of this information through leaks and everything and let people know, well, they've got us dead to rights on this. You know what, Andrew McCabe, you're probably going to be indicted. Why do you think Andrew McCabe becomes a contributor on CNN? for the same reason Joe Biden's running for president, because these guys are guilty and they've got the goods on them. But if you're Andrew McCabe from the FBI, you go work for CNN so that if you get indicted, then you can say the same thing. It's the same narrative. Well, this is a banana Republican. The president's going after his political rivals. He's interfering in elections. And it's a bunch of you-know-what. Anyway, good for Congressman Rick Crawford of Arkansas. Again, once again, he's on the House Intelligence Committee. He knows a ton of stuff that he can't say. But in keeping with that, before we go to break, Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida writes, go ahead and play this video. This is Adam Schiff, accusing Trump of doing something terrible. Do you remember, though, there was a prank phone call between Adam Schiff and what he thought were Ukrainians offering dirt on Trump, and they have it on tape. And so you talk about a hypocrite. This is an example of a hypocrite. Go.
Have seen in that call record is a president of the United States use the full weight of his office to manufacture dirt on his opponent and interfere in our election.
But Schiff himself was caught on tape trying to speak to Ukrainian officials who thought they had dirt on Trump.
You have recordings of both Sobchak and Buseva where they're discussing the compromising material on Mr. Trump?
Absolutely.
Well, obviously, we would welcome a chance to get copies of those recordings.
It is illegal, improper, a violation of oath, a violation of his duty to defend our elections and our Constitution for the president to merely ask for foreign interference.
Okay, stop. So, there are clearly two standards here, massive double standards, and it goes right along. So you've got Congressman Crawford here signing a letter with other Republicans saying, hey, these Democrat senators are hypocrites, and now you have, Adam Schiff, the head of the Intelligence Committee that Congressman Crawford sits on, he's the man. That man's on tape. That man is on tape talking with Ukrainians about dirt. I think it had something to do, they promised, naked photos or something of Trump. It's just incredible. But it was a prank phone call. They were just doing it to see if this guy would be, a giant hypocrite. Crickets from the media, though. Man, I'm telling you. It's almost as if the media or something has, an agenda or something. I don't know. We're going to take a break. 870-275-9799. Johnny Cash Friday back here in just a moment. At the bottom of the hour, we got Michael Bustler. We're going to talk the economy. Don't go anywhere. Here we go. Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us as always. It's always a pleasure to have Mr. Patrick Deakins on. He's a Justice of the Peace serving in Washington County. Patrick, how are you doing this morning, sir?
I'm awesome, Paul. What about yourself?
I'm feeling pretty good. So just generally, I follow what's going on in Washington County, specifically with the jail overcrowding. That's what we talked about the last time, this idea that, there's a study being done on what to do, and maybe, I know you don't want to raise taxes, so are there any new developments in that?
No new developments there. We're still putting the study out for a proposal. I think that's just about ready to roll out. The county has all kinds of requirements that it has to fulfill to put out a contract like that and a bidding process, which are good. It adds transparency to the process, but it just adds a little bit of time to how that's all going. So, that's kind of where we're at. Other than that, we're just in the full throes of budget season for 2020, and that has been, in my opinion, an absolute circus. So that's what we're dealing with now.
Do you guys ever get any pressure or advice from, consultants that are encouraging you to raise the pay of county workers?
Well, the county contracts with a consultant that comes in, and basically what he does is, from what I understand, a top-to-bottom review of our pay, our compensation. So, right at the start of budget season, one of the committee meetings is personnel, and he came in, his name is Mr. Johansson, and he came in and he basically went over where, all the statistics of the county pay are, and he said that basically what he would recommend is a 3% raise across the board for everyone, which is kind of where, the county over the past few years, that's kind of where everything's fell, just an across the board 3% or an across the board 5% or something like that. So, it was pretty interesting presentation by him. I definitely got the feeling that he was an advocate for the raises of the employees.
Yeah.
Towards the end, he said he was basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, Paul. Somebody went back and looked at this presentation. I'm sure the exact statistics, but these are close enough for what we're going with. The overall raises at 3% would cost the county around $750,000 a year. And he says, well, we've essentially saved $700 by older employees have cycled out of this system. People that have been there longer term and have received more raises have cycled out. So we're hiring newer people, younger people for lower wages, and so we're saving money there. So we should give everyone a raise. So it's kind of that whole, you talk about it a lot in your program. Us that look at government talk a lot about it. We're saving money that we haven't spent yet. You know what I mean? We're lowering a budget. We're finding savings that don't really truly exist, dollar for dollar, if you will. So that's what's concerning about things like that.
Do you find there's always seems to be with local governments, they always try to keep up with each other. So whether it's the local sales tax rate, well, we need to have a sales tax rate that's like, Conway or like Fayetteville. That's what they've been saying over in my neck of the woods. And in terms of, wanting raises, it's always, well, it needs to be comparable. And so I guess, there we go. Hey, welcome back, folks. So we ended the show yesterday by highlighting this story out of Dallas with the conviction of Amber Geiger, the female police officer who was white, or is white, shot an unarmed black man in his own apartment because she was confused. She thought it was hers. And the brother of the victim, on the stand after she had been sentenced to 10 years, forgave her, told her the best thing she could do was turn her life, give her life to Christ. They hugged, very emotional, such a time of forgiveness. And the media, as I told you, many in the media, not all, but many in the media didn't even cover it, and instead turned to the people outside who were politicizing it. No justice, no peace, making it a racial thing. And I will say it's satire, but the Babylon Bee does a fantastic job here. Headline: Media warns excessive forgiveness could set back outrage narrative hundreds of years. U.S. media outlets are issuing warnings that excessive displays of forgiveness and mercy could wreak havoc on hundreds of years of outrage progress. The warning comes in response to a high-profile case this week in which former police officer Amber Geiger, who is white, was found guilty of the murder of Botham Jean, a black man, in his Dallas home. Geiger was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but Brant Jean, Botham's younger brother, made a victim impact statement saying he forgave her, setting back race progress hundreds of years. Brant then asked the judge if he could give Geiger a hug. The judge foolishly allowed it, setting back race relations hundreds of more years. What people have to understand is if we keep toying around with all this grace and mercy stuff, this whole racial divide could come toppling down, explained Brad Hunter of CBS News. Are people really ready to say goodbye to that? I must say that as a journalist, I, for one, am not. What Brant Jean did in that courtroom sets black people back hundreds of years. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say it sets us back about 2,000 years. Janelle Taylor of ABC. What year does he think this is? 33 A.D.? Very great piece. Finish it up over at the Babylon Bee or BabylonBee.com. Back in a moment with Michael Busler. I heard over in my neck of the woods in Craighead County, there's a consultant, I think maybe the same one, who's saying, you guys really need to think about raising your county employees' pay to the level of Washington County. And I'm thinking, well, I've heard that Washington County wants to raise theirs to keep up with who,
Yeah. Yes. Well, they compare us to the private sector. So we know that government cannot compete with the private sector in most all categories, if you will. Now, there are a lot of other benefits that go into that employment that I think make up for the actual compensation. The retirement's great, the medical insurance is great, but You know what I mean? So yeah, we're all keep trying to keep up with the Joneses and running a race that none of us can ever see the finish line to. You know. So.
We're talking with Patrick Deakins. He's a Washington County Justice of the Peace. There's back on September 25th, a Northwest Arkansas editorial about mass transit. Now you're mentioned in here. What can you tell us about that? It says here, quote, Justice of the Peace Patrick Deakins gave voice to the doubters, saying he could not justify the expense to the citizens of his rural district. What's the deal with mass transit?
So Northwest Arkansas as a region has had an interest in mass transit for a long time now. You know, there's a lot of pressure on all the municipalities and the government, the county government's organizations to give money to our transit system over here is called Ozark Regional Transit, ORT. So, you know, we're going through the budget. They're wanting more money, of course. You know, if somebody comes to our budget meeting and wants less money, I'm going to give them a cookie and a star because this never happened before. So anyways, they want more money. The problem that I see with that is I don't necessarily have any strong opinions about a mass transit system between the municipalities. If they want to do that, that's great. I think it needs to be sustainable. However, the problem with Ozark Regional Transit is they're trying to serve the rural parts of the county out here in Washington County. And the way they're doing that is they've come up with this system of on-demand service where if you need a ride into town, you can call them and schedule a special vehicle to come out and get you and bring you to your doctor's appointments or something like that. Now, you know, listen, in a perfect world, that would be wonderful. It's just not sustainable, Paul. It's not feasible. It's not sustainable. And that's what I was asking Mr. Gardner with Ozark Regional Transit when they came and presented to our committee. I said, hey, this doesn't even seem feasible to me. Is this feasible? And his response basically to me was Washington County needs to decide whether or not they want transit. And my answer to that is thank you for being, you know, honest with us. I don't want transit in the rural part of the county. It's just not feasible, you know. So.
And what I mean, I think this is why I really respect you, Patrick, because I think, you know, we're able to say, hey, you know, they're in a perfect world, yeah, but we are in a world where we have a limited, finite number of resources, and it's not necessarily always a question of whether it's a good idea. There are a lot of good ideas, but can we actually afford it? And oftentimes the answer, the truth is, no, we can't. And that's not an answer a lot of times. You know, people don't want to hear that. Welcome back to the show on this Johnny Cash Friday. Happy Friday. Thanks for starting the beginning of your weekend with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. We need your help to do it. We turn now to economics expert. He's Dr. Michael Busler. He's a public policy analyst. He's a professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. You've seen him as a featured columnist at Newsmax, LifeSat, townhall.com. Dr. Busler, good to have you back on, sir.
Good morning. How are you? It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. It's always great to have you. Good morning to you. Now, I wanted to have you on because we've got this topsy-turvy thing going on with the stock market over the last 2 days. The Dow, what was it, more than 800 points in 2 days? And then yesterday, though, I think it closed up. What can you tell us about what we've been seeing with the stock market?
Well, the stock market is reacting to a few things. So, look, basically, when somebody buys stock, what they're willing to pay for stock depends on what they believe the future income of the corporation will be. So if you think business profits are going to go up, that'll mean stock prices will go up, and people are willing to pay more. If you believe the corporation's profit's going to go down, and then that'll take stock prices down, you're willing to pay a little lower price today. So there was some information that came out that indicates maybe the economy is slowing a little bit, and if that happens, then of course corporate profits go down. Now, did the market overreact to this? Because this has happened 2 or 3 times in the past. Last December, we had a big sell-off, you may recall, and it did recover quickly from that. So investors today are mostly nervous and very uncertain about what's going to happen in the future. The recovery from the last recession is now more than 10 years old, and that's much longer than the average recovery lasts. So that gets people a little bit nervous. The other thing is there were a couple signs. Manufacturing is slowing down a little bit. The service sector of the economy is still growing, but not quite as much as we thought. In about an hour, we get the unemployment numbers for the month of September. They're probably going to show that the economy added about 150 to 160,000 jobs. That's not bad, but it's below the nearly 200,000 jobs per month we were adding last year. So there are some signs the economy is slowing. I don't think we're heading for a recession anytime soon. I think part of the slowing is due to the Federal Reserve, we know, did overreact with raising interest rates and tightening up monetary policy. So as you may recall, from the end of 2016 and to the end of 2018, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates 8 times. And then last year, they reversed some of their quantitative easing by shrinking the money supply. Now, all of that will tend to slow economic activity. The Federal Reserve, I think, realizes they overreacted here. So in July, they dropped the interest rates 1/4 point. And a few weeks ago, they did that again. They probably will drop them again in December. And I think that will be enough to level off the economy and probably avoid a recession and bring us back to better economic growth. The consumer sector is still looking very good. That accounts for about 70% of GDP. Consumers' wages are up. Their total income is up. Inflation is relatively low. Virtually anybody today who has any skills and are looking for a job should be able to find one. There are 7 million job openings now and only 6 million unemployed people.
Wow.
So I think that the stock market overreacted a little bit, and I think we are slowing a little, but I think that'll be reversed in the short run. I think we'll get back to better growth shortly.
So a couple of weeks ago, I did see where the Fed said they were going to pump billions and billions of dollars a day into banks or something. I'm not really clear on it. It's supposed to end here at some point in October. I mean, they're only doing it for a couple of weeks. Where is that money going, Dr. Busler?
It ends up going to banks, and it increases what we call bank reserves. That's how much banks have to keep on hand. What happened was, after the recession, to get out of the recession, the Federal Reserve vastly increased the money supply in a program they called quantitative easing. And they did that by purchasing government bonds that were held by the public. So the public's holding some bonds that's not part of the money supply. The Federal Reserve says, we'll buy those back from you, which they do, and they pay the people for them, and then the people have more cash, and that increases the money supply, and theoretically, that's what really brought us out of the recession. Now, the money supply is much larger than it should be based on economist formulas. So last year, the Federal Reserve pulled $500 billion out of the money supply. That created a little bit of a liquidity problem. There wasn't enough money going around in circulation. And to reverse that problem is what you're talking about. They're pumping some reserves back into the system. Basically, the idea is they reduced the money supply too fast also, and now they're reversing that to avoid any liquidity problem.
I read a story this week that Wall Street very worried about the potential for an Elizabeth Warren presidency. Why is that?
Well, so Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders favor increases in social programs, Medicare for all, paying for students' college tuition, a number of other programs. So to pay for that, they say they're going to tax the wealthy, which they'll start out doing. Eventually, they'll have to tax the middle class too. But so they're going to tax the wealthy by putting on not just income taxes, but perhaps even wealth taxes. So what happens is that reduces the amount of capital that the wealthy have to invest, which means less money going into business, less money going into the economy, and it will tend to stagnate the economy. So Wall Street is afraid that all of these increasing tax ideas will end up reducing capital formation, tending to stagnate the economy. That's bad for Wall Street, and more importantly, is very bad for Main Street.
I mean, yeah, that's a no-brainer. I mean, these guys they're socialists, and so Wall Street, still has some, remnants of capitalism in there. We're talking with Dr. Michael Busler. So, how does Trump's impeachment factor into this market volatility that we've seen over the last couple of days?
So, what investors fear the most is uncertainty. If you know what's happening, whether it's good or bad, you can react to it. When you don't know what's happening and you have that uncertainty, it creates problems for investors. For businesses, their investment, capital investment into the economy, has been going down a little bit. And after the big tax cuts in 2018, it should be going up significantly. Well, the reason for that, again, is the uncertainty caused by a number of things. One, the trade war, but most recently is the idea of impeachment. And it doesn't appear to me that I don't think Trump did anything that's impeachable, and I read the transcript of what he said. But the Democrats are determined to impeach the president, which they have been literally since the day he's been elected president. And I don't think they're going to be successful, but who knows how this world operates today. So investors are thinking the same thing. We don't know what's going to happen. If Trump is removed from office, does that mean the end of his economic policies that have really turned the economy around? He reduced regulations. He cut taxes, created an environment for economic growth. We've had better economic growth since he's done that. And Wall Street's afraid if he's pushed out of office that, and investors are afraid if he's pushed out of office that a lot of these policies will be changed and we'll go back to the economic stagnation we had during the Obama years.
I sit here and I wonder, because I think it's obvious now they're going after Trump in a lot of ways because he is on their trail. He's uncovering the corruption of past administrations, and I think he's threatening to bring it to light, if not prosecute some. And I think that's really why, they're going after. But I sit here and I think, man, can you imagine what if he hadn't have been obstructed, if they hadn't have been doing this, if the media hadn't been lying so much? I wonder where we would be today versus where we are now if they hadn't just been constantly obstructing him,
Yeah, we'd certainly be in a lot better position. You take a look at some of the things Trump has been able to do, and he has every single Democrat against him. Some of his own members of his own party are against him, and I saw 3 separate studies that said more than 90% of the media coverage of Donald Trump is negative. So with all of that, you figure it's very difficult for him to accomplish anything yet. With all that, he's been able to turn the economy around, turn our foreign policy around, and really create a new attitude in America today. The Democrats say, look, they want to cure a lot of these perceived social injustices. They want to help lower-income people, and they do it just by giving them things. We'll give you free health care. We'll give you more food stamps. We'll give you more welfare. Well, the thing is, those people really don't want that. I mean, they take it because they don't have any other choice, but what they really want is the opportunity to earn enough income to pay for those things themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what President Trump is giving them, a growing economy, opportunity for everybody, and people that take advantage of the opportunity and earn income can now pay for all those things themselves, and they don't need the government to do it. So what President Trump, I think, has accomplished is amazing, especially considering everything that's against him.
I agree with that sentiment. Dr. Michael Busler, we appreciate it, sir. It's always great to have you on. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Look forward to doing it again.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We're going to make a smaller YouTube video of this segment. It'll be up on our YouTube channel, Conduit News. Folks, share that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the little bell to receive notifications. We're going to reset here and going to come back and Don't go anywhere. It's Johnny Cash Friday. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
No, absolutely not. And of course, I don't, I'm a big guy for liberty. I don't want to tell anybody where to live. I don't want to force anybody to do anything they don't want to, but there's benefits and consequences to where you live. If you want to live in the rural part of the county, there's services that are provided and there's services that are not provided out there, and that's just part of the decision process of making that decision of where you live. And I don't think that public transit should be into that equation at all. I mean, I think that's just a benefit that you're going to lose if you live in the rural parts of the county, and that's just my opinion on it. I'll be working with the other justices to I want to completely remove Washington County from its participation in Ozark Regional Transit, just because I want them to be able to focus on their main mission, which should be mass transit in these cities. And I almost think we're doing them a disservice by, almost stringing them along, giving them a little bit of money every year, and funding this nonsensical and non-feasible rural service out here that I don't think it serves anyone well at all.
Yeah. Is it a lot of money?
No, it's not. In the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket. I think it's about $20,000 a year, and they want an increase of around $6,000 a year. But once again, I think we're doing a disservice to everyone, because they say that service at that funding level that can't even serve the people anyways. They turn down calls all the time for the service, so it's just a failed system. So. I run into this a lot at budget, too, when people say, well, Patrick, why are you making a big deal out of this? This isn't very many dollars. And I think, well, we're death by 1,000 paper cuts at a certain point, where we can't do the things that we need to do. And everybody was looking for this big-ticket item that we can save or cut. But, I mean, it's all these little things that we're doing that are just nonsensical that I think if we took some appropriate action on some of those, we could maybe find some savings after a while if we had enough of those that would add up. If you will.
I completely agree. And you say, well, it's only $20,000 or whatever, but I completely agree with you. And what's frustrating from just somebody that observes what goes on in government, that argument that they make, well, it's only this much money, can be very effective. And it actually, I'm assuming, can kind of wear a public official down, because if you're just trying to save $20,000 and you've got people that are with each issue, $20,000 here, $30,000 there, but people come out and said, no, you can't take my piece of the pie. I mean, how many battles would you actually have? It's going to be exhausting. And I think that's kind of what they count on. And, that's why, when Ronald Reagan said, once you create a program, it's like the closest thing to eternal life, because it never goes away.
Absolutely. And it is exhausting. And I want the people to know that. Yeah. I mean, I talk to constituents all the time that'll point out particular things to me. And unfortunately, I have to tell them, yeah, we got to be sensible about this, though. We got to tackle this, the bigger fish first, or whatever we're wanting to have a battle on. You can't do it all at once, because here's what I see too with representative government. You can get a body together and they can say, yes, we're spending too much money. Yes, we need to cut this. We need to cut that. But there's somebody across the aisle or across that horseshoe that we sit on that's their pet project, if you will, for lack of a better word. That's what they really care about. They're very passionate about the Ozark Regional Transit or the 4-H or something like that. And so now you have a battle with that other person to win over enough justices to get that particular item funded or unfunded. So, yeah, it's an exhausting process. And once again, I know I always cheerlead this on your program, but people need to get involved, because that does make a difference in how their representatives think and how they're going about their action.
The the House, or I guess the state of Arkansas, they did pass an internet sales tax. And I have been kind of encouraging folks at the local level, like your quorum court level or the city council level, to start trying to dig into the numbers and try to figure out what kind of increase in revenue these local governments are going to be seeing, and to monitor it only to say, to not let it just get spent or thrown in somewhere, to actually say, we've got this increase, so maybe instead of a tax increase down the road to pay for this or that, maybe we take this new revenue coming in from the online internet sales tax and put it away so that we don't have to, raise a tax here or there. Are you concerned about this? I mean, have y'all been trying to monitor, what this increase is going to look like?
Yeah, we have, and unfortunately, we haven't really received very good information yet. We keep working with our treasurer, and what we keep getting is basically put off about, well, we haven't really seen final numbers roll in yet. It's been implemented, but it still goes through the state process, and they have to middleman it and hand it out to us. So we haven't received our first.
Here we go. Welcome back. State Representative Mickey Gates is back in the news. Of course, he is facing expulsion for this no contest plea about, with the Department of Finance Administration about not filing tax returns or not paying taxes. It's a very strange story. And I think, people, I've talked to members of the House, a lot of them feel like they have no choice. State Representative Mickey Gates says he doesn't have, hold any ill will against the people that, that are likely to vote for his expulsion. But you got to admit, though, it is really odd that the Department of Finance Administration claimed that Mickey Gates owed hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And they're allowing him to just pay back $70,000 of it. You got to admit that's kind of odd. When have you ever known the government, the IRS, or the local tax authorities to just be like, meh? It just seems very, very strange. John Moritz with this headline, State Representative Mickey Gates draws opponent for Arkansas House seat. It's somebody that Gates has faced before. His name is Don Pierce. He's an administrator for Lakeside High School, and he's going to primary Mickey Gates. Now, this is assuming that Mickey Gates gets thrown out of the House of Representatives, or doesn't get thrown out of the House of Representatives, rather. Prosecutors allege that he owed $259,000, but he only has to pay back $74,000. That's just odd to me. It says it right here in this story. Well, so regardless, it does look like State Representative Mickey Gates is going to get removed from the House of Representatives. So I'm interested in this guy running as a Republican by the last name of Pierce. Like, where is he on the issues? Okay. Reminder that State Representative Mickey Gates says that the charges against him are in retribution for legislation he filed that would have affected DFNA's ability to audit, past a certain year. Quote, I can't tell you how many widows have come up to me and said the state audited them after their husband died. They had to write big checks. As for Pierce, Gates said he didn't have any harsh words for his opponent, calling him a fine man. Pierce said his disagreements with Gates, and that's just interesting. Pierce, the guy that's going to challenge Gates, or run regardless, said his disagreements with Mickey Gates' voting records lie largely on two issues, school choice and guns. Now, whoa. Hold up for a second. Okay? School choice is in the Republican platform, that parents should have the ability to pick where their kids go to school. It's pretty basic idea. But guns, I don't know if you can find somebody that's got a more pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun rights voting record than Mickey Gates. And so if you're saying that you disagree with him on guns, that's like a huge red flag to me, unless there's some vote that I don't know about. as a public school employee and a member of the Jessieville School Board, Pierce said he did not see public schools operating on an even playing field with private schools in a way that would justify voucher programs, which Gates supports. Gates said, I support school choice. I think parents should decide for their child where they want to go to school. While both candidates said local school boards should be able to decide whether to allow teachers to carry guns in schools, Pierce expressed support for some extra measures, including universal background checks and short waiting periods to ensure that people barred from owning weapons cannot purchase them. Gates said, I don't support any additional gun laws. That's pretty good, right? I like that. I don't support any additional gun laws. That's fantastic. Okay, so, I mean, you know, that's definitely a problem. That's definitely a problem. Now, coming up on October the 11th, the legislature will vote, or the House of Representatives will vote on whether or not to expel Gates from the legislature. Now, interesting thought here. If Gates is expelled from the House, I don't think he can come back. I don't think he can just be voted back in. But I do think if State Representative Mickey Gates were to resign, right, he could run again. Something to think about. I don't know, food for thought. If State Representative Mickey Gates, it was explained to me that if he's expelled, he can't come back. Right? He's expelled. I mean, he's been expelled from the body. Right? So even if the people vote him, which is kind of strange, even if the people were to vote for him, they still wouldn't let him in. That's odd to me. But, hey, you know, the state sets the rules. I mean, the cities exist because the states willed them to exist. I mean, we are a sovereign nation, if you will. Like the state of Arkansas, the word state in our Constitution actually means what we would think of today as a nation. That's the idea of being sovereign states, sovereign entities, like the state of Great Britain. You know, we were the, you know, the sovereign states. But I would just say that it's interesting to me that if Mickey Gates were to resign now, let this stuff with the DFNA play out, okay, and then run again. Now, they might try to expel him again. Who knows? But I'm just saying, at least he could come back if he wanted to. You know, and a lot of people are saying, hey, you know, this is just... Look, the main reason they're going to expel this guy is they just don't like the politics of it. It looks bad. I mean, that's the way it is. I think there's something strange that's happened between Mickey Gates and the Department of Finance and Administration. I think that's very obvious that there is. I don't know why. You know, they offered him this plea of no contest. The judge accepted it under a provision of law that is essentially, once he pays that $75,000 back, there is no guilty plea. There's no contest. It's gone. Everything is erased. There's nothing on his record. There's nothing permanent. That's he pled under this provision. So I just find it. I find it all very, very interesting. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen? Will they give State Representative Mickey Gates the ability to go down to the floor of the House and state his case to show them what has actually happened? That would be interesting. Something tells me they're not going to. Something tells me if he starts making points that were to make the Department of Finance Administration look bad, somebody would just be like, motion for immediate consideration and cut him off and expel him. We shall see, though. One more hour coming your way next.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM Jonesboro.
And there, but you know, people come out and said, "No, you can't take my piece of the pie." I mean, you know, how many battles would you actually have? You know, it's going to be exhausting. And I think that's kind of what they count on. And, you know, that's why, you know, when Ronald Reagan said, once you create a program, it's like the closest thing to eternal life because it never goes away.
Absolutely. And it is exhausting. And I want the people to know that. Yeah, I mean, I talk to constituents all the time that'll point out particular things to me. And unfortunately, I have to tell them, yeah, we got to be sensible about this, though. We got to tackle this, the bigger fish first or whatever we're wanting to have a battle on. You can't do it all at once. Because here's what I see, too, with representative government. You can get a body together and they can say, yes, we're spending too much money. Yes, we need to cut this. We need to cut that. But there's somebody across the aisle or across that horseshoe that we sit on that's their pet project, if you will, for lack of a better word. That's what they really care about. They're very passionate about the Ozark Regional Transit or the 4-H or something like that. And so now you have a battle with that other person to win over enough justices to get that particular item funded or unfunded. So, yeah, it's an exhausting process. And once again, I know I always cheerlead this on your program, but people need to get involved because that does make a difference in how the representatives think and how they're going about their action.
The House, or I guess the state of Arkansas, they did pass an internet sales tax, and I have been kind of encouraging folks at the local level, like your quorum court level or the city council level, to start trying to dig into the numbers and try to figure out what kind of increase in revenue these local governments are going to be seeing, and to monitor it only to say, to not let it just get spent or thrown in somewhere, to actually say, we've got this increase, so maybe instead of a tax increase down the road to pay for this or that, maybe we take this new revenue coming in from the online internet sales tax and put it away so that we don't have to, raise a tax here or there. Are you concerned about this? I mean, have y'all been trying to monitor, what this increase is going to look like?
Yeah, we have, and unfortunately, we haven't really received very good information yet. We keep working with our treasurer, and what we keep getting is basically put off about, well, we haven't really seen final numbers roll in yet. It's been implemented, but it still goes through the state process, and they have to middleman it and hand it out to us. So we haven't received our first check, if you will. But yeah, listen, Paul. In general, to me, and I'm pretty sure Washington County is no different than anywhere else. This budget process, capitalization process, is completely broken. We've gone completely backwards of the way I think we should go about things in Washington County in this budget cycle. This is my first one. I'm a freshman on the court. But what we're doing is we're starting with expenses first. I think any of us in our private lives, we take our paychecks and then we plan our spending into what our revenue is. What we're doing on our end so far is we're passing all the budgets with all the expenses in it without a real good idea of what our revenue is going to look like next year, and I don't really foresee that being very sustainable. The second thing we've got to do is we've got to incentivize these department heads and these elected officials. I mean, the whole system is set up for them to grab as much money as they can in this chaotic process in the fall for the next year. I mean, there's no incentivization for them to say, I don't need as much money, I'm going to do without, I'm going to save money here. You know what I mean? There's no reason for them to do that. Why would you do that if your work is simpler and if it's easier to hire, keep hiring, keep buying equipment and all this kind of stuff? And yeah, the counties have to have some sort of process to put money back to fund for future capital investment. I mean, the jail overcrowding issue. We also have an issue with our radio communication systems we're going to have to replace. These are things that counties know are going to be issues in the future. They know that if their region's growing, they're going to need more services. They know that if the radio system's supposed to last 15 years when they buy it, that 15 years they're going to have to replace it. And these counties need to start getting on some sort of planning cycle to put money back for these projects. Instead, I hate it every time, Paul. Every time something comes up that we need to replace, it's like then the conversation starts. Well, is it a sales tax or a millage increase? And it disgusts me and it makes me sick every time we have to get into that discussion.
You're exactly right. And, on the radio front, I know for a fact in Northeast Arkansas, they're Jonesboro's facing the same thing. They're, and I couldn't help. I was at a breakfast place the other day, and you know what? I don't even think I could classify it as eavesdropping because the gentleman was just being too loud. And he was associated with the government in some way. I'm not going to go into how, but he was going off on this radio situation, saying we have known, that the radios are only going to be good for a finite amount of time. And so why in the world don't you start to...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's hour number 2. Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. Hey, coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking with State Representative Josh Miller from District 66. I want to get his opinion on 2 things. The first thing I want to talk to Josh Miller about is this record revenue that Arkansas got last month. Why do we get it? I'm just curious. Some people say, well, what does the governor say? This headline, conduitnews.com, also Conduit for Action, Governor Hutchinson says the darndest things. Arkansas tax collections are increasing. The Democrat Gazette reports the net in September increased by $34.5 million, or 6.1% from the same month ago a year ago, to $604.1 million, beating the state's forecast by $31 million, or 5.5%. So they're up 5%. You understand that's a gargantuan amount of money. So how did Governor Asa Hutchinson spend the news of more tax collections despite him spending all year bragging on an income tax cut? Quote, "This means we are successfully absorbing the latest round of income tax cuts, and we are continuing to pay for important new initiatives, such as increased teacher pay and mental health stabilization units across the state." Baloney. The governor successfully absorbed the income tax cut by passing more tax increases. To start with, he insisted on taxing you and your purchases from out-of-state sellers, internet sales tax. And then there were other tax increases, a cigarette-related tax, a cell phone service tax, a water tax bill. The increase in tax revenue reported for September doesn't even include his tax increases on gasoline and diesel fuel, which just kicked in on Tuesday. It is not state government that is reducing to absorb the latest round of income tax cuts. Now think about that. What a statement that's completely detached from reality. It is not state government that is reducing to absorb the latest round of income tax cuts. It is the money in your pocket that is being reduced by other taxes. And let's also make the point, the latest round of income tax cuts, they get phased in. We have to pay for it now so they can reduce it later. That's another thing that's lost on this here. So anyway, it really came at bad timing. If you're a fiscal conservative, you're looking at your pocketbook, you're looking at what the state government's doing, you're paying more at the pump, and then they say they've got record revenue in the same week. That's like, well, why did you raise my taxes if you've got all this extra money coming in every month, beating your projections by over 5%? It's really frustrating. So we'll talk to State Representative Josh Miller and get his take on that. I feel like it's going to be pretty short and pretty sweet. But the other thing I'm going to talk to him about is the Arkansas Game and Fish and chronic wasting disease. He does chair a subcommittee over or a committee over Arkansas Game and Fish, I believe. And so we're going to talk to him about this. What is chronic wasting disease? It continues to spread in Arkansas. A lot of this is there's a lot of hunters who are skeptical about the way the Arkansas Game and Fish are managing this. Arkansas Game and Fish, there are great people that work there. I also think they're too powerful of an agency personally, but there are good people that work there. There's hunters that are well-intentioned. Their Game and Fish is well-intentioned in a lot of areas, but they also follow like national best practices to solve problems like CWD. And there's a lot of hunters who know their ground and know the land and know the deer and know the wildlife better than the Arkansas Game and Fish. I mean, this is just the truth, especially private landowners. So there's a debate, I guess, over how serious of a problem this actually is. How long has it been here with us? Anyway, we'll talk to State Representative Josh Miller about that to get his point, because he is a big hunter. By the way, I don't know if anybody saw, his father, State Representative Josh Miller's father, killed the largest I mean, this deer was, I've never seen antlers like this. It was crazy. It was absolutely nuts. All right, so we'll talk to him. All right, let's start with, so we went over this Conduit News article real quick. Did anybody see this about China? Our theme all week, by the way, has been that we need to impeach China, okay? Headline, shot Hong Kong activist faces charges. So the young man who was the first victim of police gunfire in Hong Kong's months-long pro-democracy protest was charged Thursday with rioting and attacking police. So the guy who was shot, I think, took a club and hit an officer who was shot, and that's what happens. He was shot. He's 18 years old. Of course, we've had these widespread clashes. This was on China's National Day of like 70 years of communism. Fantastic. Media outlets reported that Chief Executive Carrie Lam will hold a special executive council meeting today to discuss a ban on masks, which have helped protesters conceal their identities and other tough measures. And have you seen the Antifa people are like, see, Hong Kong people, they're wearing masks. That's why we wear masks. No, Antifa, you guys are a domestic terrorism group. Okay, we're not taking Antifa members off the street and selling their organs one at a time, okay? Over in China, that's exactly what they're doing. We don't have a social credit score yet where if you're caught doing something, you can't ride the subway or use public services. We're not doing that to Antifa. No, Antifa, you guys are covering your faces so that you can be violent and break people's property and then get away with it, all right? Now, in this case, this guy, did strike an officer and was shot. By the way, we're not shooting Antifa members in the chest either. A little bit different things going on between the two. You really can't compare the two. Considering the fact the Hong Kong protesters are waving the American flag because it means freedom, and Antifa's over here burning it and wanting anarchy. I mean, I really think they're just anarchists. They're not anti-fascists. They are themselves fascist. Let's see. Pro-Beijing legislator Michael Tang confirmed the meeting. Activists and some lawmakers warned that such harsh measures would only further alienate the people and could prompt a more ferocious backlash. Listen to this. Anger against the government has built up since this kid, Zhang Chi-kin, was shot at close range after he struck a police officer with a rod. Zhang was among 7 people charged Thursday with rioting, which carries a penalty of up to 10 years in prison. Okay, so that's the Hong Kong justice. But if China had their way, I just want to remind everybody, they would take this kid and they would hook him up to one of those machines that keeps all of his organs oxygenated well after he's dead, and they would sell his body parts. They'd sell his organs, they'd sell his kidneys. I wonder if instead of 10 years, you could be like, hey, just take one of my kidneys. Let me be free. Take my kidney. I wonder if Chinese dissidents could bargain with them. No, because you're a dissident. You're a minority in your thinking. You're a minority in your thinking. And you're a pesky minority at that. You want freedom? You're waving the American flag? You're protesting? Hey, tell you what. Why don't we sell your organs and murder you, and so we make a bunch of money and we get rid of you, and which, it'll be a lot more convenient that way. You're an inconvenience, you Chinese dissidents. You're just an inconvenience. Now, what does this have to do with us? It has to do with the fact that our leadership in Arkansas wants to bring this government here. And I've said it over and over, but now we have to ask a more important question. Who in Arkansas is being paid by China? Because at this point, that's the only explanation that I have for why we would continue to ignore the evidence before us that this particular path of economic development is not wise. It's also not not moral either, I would say. I know people get uncomfortable when you push that aspect, but okay, you're tearing down churches. Well, they're just not a Christian nation. Okay, well, what else do Christian nations do? Yeah, or I'm sorry, what else do non-Christian nations do? I mean, they've got the money, they've got the technology, they got the infrastructure. They're taking Christians, other dissidents, Buddhists, the Falun Gong people. They're hooking them up to machines that keep them alive and selling their organs to wealthy elite around the world where you can schedule heart transplant surgery. Schedule it. It's time for my... It's like it's a colonoscopy or something. Oh, it's time for my time for my heart transplant. No. Not to mention you have the FBI, the CIA, saying China's no good. We're in a trade war with them. We know what happened with the Bidens. I mean, the president taking heat now because he was saying, hey, you know what? China should investigate the Bidens too. Well, China gave Hunter Biden, John Kerry's son, and Whitey Bulger's nephew a ton of money. Joe Biden is a huge supporter of China. Joe Biden is on record saying China's not a threat. Now, I would like to compare the two. Joe Biden on record, China's not a threat to us. The way Donald Trump thinks. Governor Asa Hutchinson clearly does not believe China is a threat to the United States. So, I've been talking about this for a year. And it's to the point where you just have to start asking the question, who in Arkansas is getting money from China? There's no other question to ask. Because this is what they do. This is how they treat every country. And I think the more, and again, the president comes out, we know that the Ukraine and the China situation are connected, by the way. Hunter Biden's the common link, but there's companies that are connected. And Asa comes out in support of the impeachment inquiry, which separates him from Doyle Webb, the Republican Party of Arkansas, and all six of our delegates that we send to Washington, D.C. 2 in the Senate, 4 in the House. And I mean, you put it up there and do what you want with it. I mean, you can connect the dots. Something is very weird here. I've been asking for a year, why China, why China, why China? Now the question is, we've got all these corrupt politicians that have gone to jail. They're perfectly willing to enrich themselves illegally because we've got them dead to rights. We've got the U.S. attorneys in the Eastern District of Arkansas, Western District of Arkansas, Western District of Missouri. They know how corrupt the state of Arkansas is. And so now I'm asking the deeper question: what is going on here? Who in our state is benefiting from these Chinese deals? 6 of them, bringing the Communist Chinese Party into Arkansas. It's an uncomfortable question. You can say it's a conspiracy. No, I mean, the fact is there are people that are watching this, that are looking at what Arkansas is doing. And I think at this point, Congressman Rick Crawford is one of them because, I mean, he's written an op-ed in Talk Business and Politics. He said similar things on this program. He gave an interview last week where he was saying the Chinese cannot be trusted and they are not here to help us. But there are other people as well who are watching this from afar, and you've got all of these warning signs saying that the Communist Chinese are not our friends. It's one thing to try to trade with them, but it's another thing to bring these entities here. And yet our economic development policy ignores all of that. ASA, Mike Preston, the AEDC, and they jump and fully embrace the Communist Chinese. Fully embrace them. We want you here. I mean, the governor used to work for Homeland Security, by the way. He ignores the threat of China and what it poses to America, what the FBI says the Chinese are doing when they get here, the theft of rice technology down at Stuttgart by 2 Chinese nationals who have been indicted. Ignore all of that and still welcome them in. The only question we can ask at this point is, what don't we know? They bribe everybody. They do. They Mozambique, Cuba, really big in Zimbabwe. I mean, they want those minerals. Anytime they want what you have, whether it's in the ground or they just want a presence, the first thing they do is they make sure they get the politicians on their side, and they're going to roll out some plan. And the list of people that you need to okay these Chinese deals in Arkansas is very small. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they're voting on these economic development projects. The Arkansas Economic Development Commission, under the governor's office, has broad authority to give away taxpayer dollars. Because, I mean, the legislature does fund it, but, I mean, you know, many people in the legislature that believe in economic development by giving away taxpayer dollars to private companies, I don't believe in it, but the ones that do, I mean, they want to bring in, you know, American auto manufacturers, or they want to bring in American companies, or maybe European companies, but certainly not companies from like Saudi Arabia, certainly not companies from Russia, certainly. But no, China's fine, though. No, I'm sorry. China's okay to bring in here. No. So, yeah. I'm interested to see, by the way, as the president continues to bring up, you know, and he did this, you know, yeah, Biden's corrupting Ukraine, you know, and people are like, yeah, okay, now do China. And yesterday, that's what the president essentially said. He's got everybody, can you believe the president is talking about getting China to look into Biden as well? Impeach. But what he's actually doing is now the press is now reporting this story that they are phrasing as an anti-Trump story. But you know how many people now realize, wait a second, you mean the Bidens did something in China too? Yeah. So yeah, it's all coming out. And I want to also remind you, another piece of this puzzle is the email address that Hillary Clinton's emails were forwarded to had the name Carter Heavy Industries. It was carterheavyindustries@gmail.com. That's where Hillary Clinton's emails in her private server were being forwarded to this address. Carter Heavy Industries is a Chinese company in the Shandong province. These Chinese deals coming into Arkansas, they're from the Shandong province. I just think we've got a lot of questions to ask here. We need answers. Just stop. I mean, right now, all you got to do is say, you know what, call a press conference. You know what, we're severing deals with China. They're no good for America. We want to trade with them. It's great, but we're not going to bring these Chinese deals. We're not going to do this anymore. Just stop it. Just end it. I don't understand why we can't just end it. That's what I just thought of, Joe. Remember the last time somebody said end it. It ends it, yeah. Where is Senator Hendren in all this, by the way? Is he okay with this? Senator Hendren, the governor's nephew, the president pro temp of the Senate, you know, he's an Air Force guy, you know, Arkansas, you know, Missouri Air Guard, Arkansas Air Guard. I mean, you know, he goes, I think he still serves and goes on missions and serves our country. And I mean, I wonder what he thinks about the national security implications of and the dangers that China poses, you know? I mean, certainly we don't want, I mean, is he putting the welcome mat out too? Because that's just strange. Look what they're doing. You talk about China and their military. They, this week, announced they got a bomb that can reach us in 30 minutes. They're expanding in the South China Sea. What they're doing militarily is just as scary as what they're trying to do here economically with property theft and intellectual property, you know, agreements. Okay, we got to take a break. Let me know what you think. Sound off, facebook.com/Conduit News. Also, like us or subscribe to us on YouTube, Conduit News. Click the little bell to receive notifications. Got to go to break. Johnny Cash Friday back in a moment. Josh Miller coming up at 7:33.
See that being very sustainable. The second thing we've got to do is we've got to incentivize these department heads and these elected officials I mean, the whole system is set up for them to grab as much money as they can in this chaotic process in the fall for the next year. I mean, there's no incentivization for them to say, I don't need as much money. I'm going to do without. I'm going to save money here. You know what I mean? There's no reason for them to do that. Why would you do that if your work is simpler and if it's easier to hire, keep hiring, keep buying equipment, and all this kind of stuff? And yeah, the counties have to have some sort of process to put money back to fund for future capital investment. I mean, the jail overcrowding issue. We also have an issue with our radio communication systems we're going to have to replace. These are things that counties know are going to be issues in the future. They know that if their region's growing, they're going to need more services. They know that if
Guess what I just did?
What?
I picked up my monthly check from Southland Promotions.
I didn't know you worked there.
I don't. Southland Promotions set up an online store for my church, and now it's super easy to raise money.
How?
All I did was choose which items to offer, and Southland Promotions did the rest. They'll even mail everything for you. And now I just pick up a check at the end of every month.
Wow, can I set one up for my kids' baseball team?
Southland Promotions can set up an online store for anything. Churches, schools, sports teams,
Northeast Arkansas, they're Jonesboro's facing the same thing. They're, you know, and I couldn't help. I was at a breakfast place the other day, and you know what? I don't even think I could classify it as eavesdropping because the gentleman was just being too loud, and he was he was associated with the government in some way. I'm not going to go into how, but he was going off on this radio situation, saying we have known, you know, that the radios are only going to be good for a finite amount of time. And so why in the world don't you start to plan 5 years before they go out? Go ahead and start to plan and yet there's just such a lack of foresight. And I think that has to do, you know, you would never do that personally, to your point earlier, but it's just the tendency of men when they are in government, they don't look at it like they're spending and planning their own, you know, with their own money. It's somebody else's, and so they don't really have to be as strict or disciplined, you know?
Absolutely. And I want the people of Washington County to know, while Seth buys 1,000 paper cuts on my end, it's going to be the same for them, and they need to start paying attention and looking at this process because, you know, what I'm already hearing is you kind of hear these grumblings or these initial talks before like a real big push happens. And I think it's for people to try to get a feeling of where everyone is at in their minds on this issue.
All right, here we go. Welcome back.
There's already a lot of talk about the Washington County.
Had a break
as
for a
county
minute
can
there.
raise
We got a
their
little
millage,
cash music
and that can be
in.
done by
Man, yeah, I'm reading some of your comments here. I mean, you guys are on it. You guys know. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So we're forced to ask the hard question. You know, we're forced to, unfortunately, ask the questions that many people, you know, in establishment, they don't want to hear this. And, you know, they don't have to deal with this. Party loyalties run deep, but who's making money off of China in Arkansas? Off of China's investment here. Now, I'm not talking about their you know, I'm just talking about under the table who stands to benefit. What don't we know? What don't we know? That's a huge problem, in my opinion. Hey, the Epic Times, this article you need to check out if you haven't already. It was on Twitter. It came out on September 25th, so it's a little late, but you realize that there's a Bill Clinton era law that has, according to some, distorted the child protective services aspect of government, according to parents. There's a law that's been passed by President Trump that seeks to reform the child protective services system that is in crisis. It certainly is in crisis here in the state of Arkansas. We have certain judges that refuse to give kids over to family members. And instead they put them in the system. This has people really concerned. In a long time, and I've heard absolute horror stories before, by the way, of what happens if, you know, well, a child broke his arm in a normal accident. Well, now you got to answer to the Child Protective Services.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce. the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
The radios are only going to be good for a finite amount of time. And so why in the world don't you start to plan 5 years before they go out? Go ahead and start to plan and yet there's just such a lack of foresight. And I think that has to do, you would never do that personally, to your point earlier, but it's just the tendency of men when they are in government, they don't look at it like they're spending and planning their own, with their own money. It's somebody else's, and so they don't really have to be as strict or disciplined,
Absolutely. And I want the people of Washington County to know, while death by 1,000 paper cuts on my end, it's going to be the same for them, and they need to start paying attention and looking at this process, because, what I'm already hearing is you kind of hear these grumblings or these initial talks before like a real big push happens. And I think it's for people to try to get a feeling of where everyone is at in their minds on this issue. But there's already a lot of talk about the Washington County as a county can raise their millage, and that can be done by the quorum court without a vote of the people. They have 6 more mills that they could put on a property tax to increase it. And there's already talk about it. And one thing, the biggest argument I get is, if we raised that 6 mills, most people wouldn't even notice on their property tax bill. So why are we fussing around when we can just raise it? Most people won't say anything. And once again, I think that's a disgusting way to look at the people's money. And the one thing I've told, I was talking to a reporter the other day, and he was specifically talking to me about the radios because he knows I'm anti-tax. And so he was basically trying to, I think, feel me out and say, well, would you support that? It seems like the radios is a great endeavor, right? That's how they get you. That's pain point politics. This is what the first responders in the sheriff's department need. They need radios. Can't you support that? And what I told him was, I will never support a tax increase until I have seen that the government has spent our money as efficiently and as responsibly as possible, and they still don't have the money to take care of our first responders. But absolutely, that has not happened yet. And I don't think I've ever seen it demonstrated. We're not spending money responsibly. We're not spending money as efficiently as we could. And so by then, don't get me back into this corner about pain point politics, about helping out our sheriff's department. We need to find a way to get this done other ways if we're not doing what we need, or we're not acting responsibly in other areas.
Patrick Deakins, I appreciate it, folks. Listen to him. He's in local government, and if you like he says, you should get involved too in your local government, because that's really where you can have a giant impact on. All right, welcome back. 702759799. You can call or text channel, facebook.com/Conduit News. Here now with us is the infamous State Representative Josh Miller. He's from District 66. Josh, how are you this morning?
Well, Paul, I'm doing good. I appreciate that introduction there. That's actually nicer than I get other places. So
yeah, well,
I'll take it.
I trust me, I know. So you are the chair of is it a subcommittee or the committee on Arkansas Game and Fish?
It's a subcommittee, part of Legislative Council, the Oversight Committee of Game and Fish and State Police.
Okay. So, the Arkansas Game and Fish, the very powerful agency in and of themselves. I wanted to have you on. Well, first of all, your father killed one of the biggest buck I think I've ever seen. Did you guys actually count the points on that thing? I've never seen anything like it.
I haven't gotten them all counted yet, but it's over 20.
That is
we didn't count, but it was an incredible deer, just a buck of 5 lifetimes. I think Dad is being rewarded for 70-something years of good living on this earth, clean living.
Well, let me tell you, those are some incredible photos. You can see them, folks. They're up on Facebook. Okay, so Josh, I guess they've expanded some of these quarantine areas for chronic wasting disease. Deer season is upon us, or about to be,
right.
and so what are your thoughts on chronic wasting disease, on the efforts the Game and Fish here. They we now have Baxter County, Stone County included. It appears to be spreading. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think this is my personal opinion. I'm not a biologist, whatever, but I have done quite a bit of research on this because I am an avid hunter and have land, and actually, we have a place in Stone County that's in the CWD zone, so I'm keenly interested. I think that we're going to discover, as it's you're kind of seeing this all over the country already. The more you look for something, the more you're going to find. I believe that we're looking more for CWD now. I think we're obviously going to find it more. I don't know that. First of all, I don't think that our public folks out here need to freak out about CWD. I don't think that they need to not eat deer that they shoot, or or quit hunting, or just say, well, we're going to lose all of our deer herd to CWD. I've asked the question, how many deer that we know have CWD that tested positive for chronic wasting disease? How many of those deer have died from chronic wasting disease? And the answer is 0. They've either been shot or hit with a car, or roadkill, or something else. But there's been not one deer that we can say, well, this deer expired from chronic wasting disease. So it's not good. We want to cooperate with Game and Fish. And I think they're trying their best, but I'm not buying the whole, CWD as the apocalyptic ending to our deer herd.
Well, so I'm not a biologist either, but from what I can tell, you've got biologists maybe in the private sector who think differently than the biologists who are working for the government. Is that true? Can you expand on that any?
I think so. I think there's definitely been a rift between government employed biologists, whether that be U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or for various state conservation agencies or whatever. And it's not, and I don't mean to imply that here in Arkansas, just all over the country. This is what has kind of turned up, and you've got a lot of your private sector biologists that are saying, hey, this is the prion that causes chronic wasting disease is in the soil. It's been around forever, and we don't know how to get rid of things that are in the soil. And so, this is not anything to be worried about, and we should just go right on and keep hunting just like we always have, and keep, managing our deer herds the same way, and just basically ignore it. And then the biologists that work for the government obviously feel differently. They have a best practices protocol that's being implemented. What's being implemented here in Arkansas is being implemented in every other state where they've found CWD. And I imagine by the end, after this coming deer season, we're going to probably add several more states to the states that have found CWD, and
because now they're testing. Now they're testing for it everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've got 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe a few more years ago than that, over in Mississippi, nobody ever thought about CWD. Nobody ever thought about anything, and they weren't testing for it, weren't looking for it. And anyway, nothing's really changed with their deer herd. Now they're looking for it, and they found it in a few spots, and so now, they're changing up regulations and operating under this best practices protocol. And again, I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I'm not here. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me and say that we shouldn't be, cooperating with Game and Fish or whatever. I definitely want to. I've told Game and Fish they're more than welcome to come to my place and test for CWD all they want. And I mean that. We want to be cooperative, cooperate with them, but at the same time, I think there's two trains of thought, and it's maybe like anything else. Maybe the actual real truth lies somewhere in the middle.
We're talking with State Representative Josh Miller. I'm on the CWD. I'm on the Game and Fish website. Their CWD page. It says in February 2016, an elk was harvested in Newton County, tested positive for CWD. Now there was an elk herd that was brought in here by the after they were out of Arkansas, they brought them back in. I'm curious because up in Colorado, up in that area, right, the elk up there had a lot of CWD, and I understand they're flourishing now. Is that correct?
That is true. If you go to where CWD was first discovered 25, 30 years ago out in Colorado, it was discovered in elk and mule deer, and you go out there right now, those same areas, and those herds are flourishing, doing well. I mean, people are spending crazy amounts of money to go out there and hunt them. And so, again, I don't want folks to, be freaking out and distraught over this and think, well, we're going to, this is it. That, deer hunting as we know it is over. I don't think that's the case. And I always want to remind folks, hey, our game wardens, our game and fish folks that are out there in the field, and I've said this before, Paul, is that there's more people that care about what the Game and Fish Commission does, the rules and regulations that they put out, and that put our game wardens and our field officers in under more scrutiny than they do about the state budget, taxes we raise, or whatever. Game and Fish is a very influential department in our state. And anyway, when you see these guys and ladies in the field, say hi to them, thank them for what they do, because we do ask them to do a tough job.
Yeah.
And they don't have a lot of backing.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, people are definitely critical, but the agency is very powerful. There are great people that work there. They're trying to do the best they can. Like you said, there are two schools of thought with this chronic wasting disease. But there are also other problems that can potentially happen and materialize because of their surveillance. Now, the Game and Fish, to be fair to them, they have said, listen, we want more hunters so that you can help us try to track where the chronic wasting disease is going. We have to have hunters or because we can't do it all by ourselves. But for example, they've put Baxter County now. This is Mountain Home area in north central Arkansas. They've put Baxter County now in the quarantine zone. But there's some places in Baxter County. The regulation states, okay, so if you kill a deer now in Baxter County, you cannot take that meat with the bone in outside of the county. If the county next to it is not in the quarantine zone, that is now, against regulations. You're going to get a big hefty fine if they were to police it and catch you doing it. But there are places in Baxter County, Josh, where there's no way to get your meat into Mountain Home without first going outside of Baxter County into Fulton County and then back in. You know what I mean? And so there are unintended consequences from this, and it does make it more difficult sometimes.
There is, and I believe, I fully believe that if you're in a situation like that, and you were, questioned about it, I think our game wardens, all of our officers are going to be try to be as understanding and lenient. There's always extenuating circumstances and exceptions, to every rule. They don't want to. They're not going to come out there, and if you've got to drive down one road. You got one road in and out of your place, and you got to cross the county line to get back into, your home county, or like you were saying, get back into Mountain Home or whatever. I don't believe that the game wardens are going to be sitting right there waiting for you to cross the county line, and as soon as you do, say, aha,
Well,
got
hey,
you.
now that you've said that, I think that's more likely to be the case.
Well, probably so. They're probably going to be like, well, we want to make Miller look like an idiot, which is not hard to do.
Oh, man.
But,
Well,
anyway.
So and again, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness on this. We're not trying to just throw the Arkansas Game and Fish under the bus here, but with this chronic wasting disease, there is talk about, like you said, it's in the soil, it's in the ground. We might have had this for a long time before somebody finally caught it, and the deer have been doing fine, potentially. I mean, we don't know one way or the other, but it's in the soil. But there are these feeding regulations, and private landowners are starting to worry that they're just going to take away the ability to feed via a corn feed or something like that altogether, because you can't do it except during the season, right?
Right. That if you're in the CWD zone, you can't feed. Now, this doesn't mean you can't have bird feed out. It doesn't mean you can't do whatever. But I don't have the regulations from me. There are some exceptions. You can feed your obviously you can feed livestock, whatever. But during they want to take away the baiting, basically. Putting out corn and that kind of stuff from the first of the year, basically January through the end of August. Now, we can feed from September 1 to December 31. Now, and that's one of those things I'm not sure about. I understand what the rationale is for the rule. The Game and Fish does not want to make it where folks can't feed during deer season, because then they might see a decline in the number of hunters, and that's not what they need. So they're going to keep baiting legal during the season. And again, I'm kind of the opinion, if we know for a fact that deer being around corn feeders or mineral licks or whatever is a problem, and is why this disease is getting transferred, then let's just outlaw feeding altogether. But because we're saying, hey, we're gonna make it where we're not gonna transfer the disease for 2/3 of the year, and that other third we're gonna wish it luck and hope it doesn't happen.
I see what you're saying. You're essentially making the point that doesn't make much sense.
It does raise the question, and again, I understand Game and Fish is saying, their answer to it is, well, we want to make it. We don't want to run off hunters. We still want to, enable them to do what they've always done, and carry on like normal through deer season. Well, I mean, if you're like me, I like to feed year round. I like to have, so we do supplemental feeding and all that stuff at our place, and that's something that we enjoy doing. And it kind of, it sucks to think, well, if I'm feeding past New Year's Day, or past New Year's Eve, I reckon I'm in violation.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we're, I still encourage everybody to be cooperative, and hopefully maybe we'll discover that this will just go away, and it's not that big a deal.
No, I think you're right. I think
why can't we do with CWD what we do with all other government problems? Just form a task force, sweep it under the rug, and forget about it.
Oh, man, I like that. That's really good. Well, speaking of that, let me get your thoughts real quick. We did have, The gas tax increase went into effect this week. We don't have a lot of time left, Josh, but can you give us your thoughts on the fact that state government is, they've seen in the net in September, the revenue increased $34.5 million, 6.1% from the same month a year ago. That beats the state's forecast by $31.4 million or 5.5%. What are your thoughts on this increased revenue into the government?
Well, I mean, I think as far as the reason behind it, it's pretty simple. The economy is doing well, and we raise taxes. And then, obviously, so there's more revenue coming in. And then, if we're doing that, that's great. I think we need to, immediately start looking at ways we can put more money back in taxpayers' pockets, and not continue to nickel and dime our way to a bunch of tax increases as we've done in the past. So that's pretty much my thoughts. I think
I like it. That's a good summary. The economy's doing good, and we raise taxes, so the government has a lot more money than they thought they would.
Exactly.
That's pretty good. Hey, well, State Representative Josh Miller, I appreciate it. It's always great to talk to you, sir. Thanks for spending time with us, and thanks for talking about this game and fish issue the way that you did, and chronic wasting disease. People need to know, there are new counties in the quarantine zone, and so, like you said, cooperate with them, but then let's also be willing to encourage them to maybe go and think along that other line of thought if we can. So I really appreciate what you do, Josh.
Hey, thank you, Paul. Appreciate you, man.
All righty, folks. We're going to take a break, going to reset here. It is Johnny Cash Friday. We have your meme of the day. We didn't get to it yesterday because I ran out of time. I was talking about this story down in Dallas with Amber Geiger and the love of Christ that the brother of the deceased showed her if she was sentenced to 10 years. And I wanted to make sure I got to that, and in doing so, we ran out of time. So we have your meme of the day coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Here we go. Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us as always. It's always a pleasure to have Mr. Patrick Deakins on. He's a Justice of the Peace serving in Washington County. Patrick, how are you doing this morning, sir?
I'm awesome, Paul. What about yourself?
I'm feeling pretty good. So just generally, I mean, I follow what's going on in Washington County, specifically with the jail overcrowding. That's what we talked about the last time, this idea that, there's a study being done on what to do, and maybe, I know you don't want to raise taxes, so are there any new developments in that?
No new developments there. We're still putting the study out for a proposal. I think that's just about ready to roll out. The county has all kinds of requirements that it has to fulfill to put out a contract like that and a bidding process, which are good. It adds transparency to the process, but it just adds a little bit of time to how that's all going. So, that's kind of where we're at. Other than that, we're just in the full throes of budget season for 2020, and that has been, in my opinion, an absolute circus. So that's what we're dealing with now.
Do you guys ever get any pressure or advice from, consultants that are encouraging you to raise the pay of county workers?
Well, the county contracts with a consultant that comes in, and basically what he does is, from what I understand, a top-to-bottom review of our pay, our compensation. So, right at the start of budget season, one of the committee meetings is personnel, and he came in, his name is Mr. Johansson, and he came in and he basically went over where, all the statistics of the county pay are, and he said that basically what he would recommend is a 3% raise across the board for everyone, which is kind of where, the county over the past few years, that's kind of where everything's fell, just an across-the-board 3% or an across-the-board 5% or something like that. So, it was pretty interesting presentation by him. I definitely got the feeling that he was an advocate for the raises of the employees.
Yeah.
Towards the end, he said he was basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, Paul. Somebody went back and looked at this presentation. I'm sure the exact statistics, but these are close enough for what we're going with. The overall raises at 3% would cost the county around $750,000 a year. And he says, well, we've essentially saved $700 by older employees have cycled out of this system. People that have been there longer term and have received more raises have cycled out. So we're hiring newer people, younger people for lower wages, and so we're saving money there. So we should give everyone a raise. So it's kind of that whole, you talk about it a lot in your program. Us that look at government talk a lot about it. We're saving money that we haven't spent yet. You know what I mean? We're lowering a budget. We're finding savings that don't really truly exist, dollar for dollar, if you will. So that's what's concerning about things like that.
Do you find there's always seems to be with local governments, they always try to keep up with each other. So whether it's the local sales tax rate, well, we need to have a sales tax rate that's like Conway or like Fayetteville. That's what they've been saying over in my neck of the woods. And in terms of wanting raises, it's always, well, it needs to be comparable. And so I guess I heard over in my neck of the woods in Craighead County, there's a consultant, I think maybe the same one, who's saying, you guys really need to think about raising your county employees' pay to the level of Washington County. And I'm thinking, well, I've heard that Washington County wants to raise theirs to keep up with who,
Yeah. Yes. Well, they compare us to the private sector. So we know that government cannot compete with the private sector in most all categories, if you will. Now, there are a lot of other benefits that go into that employment that I think make up for the actual compensation. The retirement rate, the medical insurance.
There we go.
Great, but,
it's a good one.
So
here.
yeah, we're all
Daddy saying bass. 870-275-9799. Welcome back to the show. We're kind of winding things down here, concluding the 10th hour of Conduit News Radio this morning. I want to remind everybody, it's up at Conduit for Action or Conduit News, and I would like for you guys to go share this on your Facebook pages. And it's Governor Asa says the darndest things. It is interesting that this means, he said, quote, "This means we are successfully absorbing the latest round of tax cuts." That gives the impression that we're not spending more, and the fact of the matter is, it's what State Representative Josh Miller just said. The reason collections are up is because the economy's good and we raise taxes on people. And we nickel and dimed our way to raise taxes, right? You might cut here, but you've raised more than you cut. So it's a net tax increase. That's what we're facing. Now, I want to warn you, viewer discretion is advised with this next meme, because this might burn your retinas. I'm going to be honest. Here's your meme of the day, courtesy of Steelers Rising on Instagram. That is so scary. Breaking news: Bernie Sanders has recovered from his operation and will resume his presidential campaign in 2020. And it's a picture of Bernie Sanders with Hillary Clinton's face absorbed into his. It's so gross. It's just disgusting. But we will post it. If you want to see this, it's pretty funny. It deserves a retweet. Go to Conduit News on Twitter. And it's at Conduit News. Really simple. And we're going to post this here as soon as we get off the air in 1 minute. So, Arkansas, thank you for listening. Thank you for helping us build this Liberty machine. If you want to help us, you could also subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell to receive notifications. Arkansas, we will see you back here on Monday. Thank you for listening. Be safe.